All right, check the mic after dark. Giants Cowboys game just finished up on Thursday Night Football. Cowboys hold on to win it 20-15. They move to 2-2. Giants fall to 1-3. It was a entertaining game, I think, Sam. A lot of field goals on the Giants' end and some missed opportunities. They kept it closer than I thought that they would. And then the big story, I think, coming out for both teams, Malik Neighbors diagnosed with a concussion late for the Giants. And Micah Parsons was carted off the field with a late looked like a lower, perhaps ankle injury. Don't know if there's a report on that yet, but not great there for either team with those injuries.
Yeah, particularly entertaining if you like penalties. A lot of flags. Al Michaels, I thought, was going to lose his mind at one point. Thankfully, I think they obviously got together. They had a meeting at halftime. They decided, let's just ease off on the flags a little bit because otherwise Al is going to jump out of his booth in the stadium. It was getting a bit out of control in the first half.
I can't get over the tweet that was out there. It was just the funniest thing. I got to share it now.
Yeah, you're going to have to.
Kirk's a friend, so I don't want to, Bill DiFilippo says, Al Michaels, I want to beat every referee to death with a hammer. Kirk Herbstreit, Devin Singletary went to Florida Atlantic University. Like that kind of sums up the broadcast tonight. Giants hung tough, man. I don't know what happened with Daniel Jones and the deep ball, but they were picking Dallas apart underneath. He was very efficient. I mean, he ends up 29 for 40, but at one point he was like 25 for 29 or something passing, all underneath stuff. But every time he tried to go deep, including a deep ball, a free play, it was underthrown by a wide margin. We're talking like 5 to 8 yards here as far as underthrows go.
It's wild. Like, remember, this guy got the nickname Danny Dimes from dropping dimes deep down the field. Like Daniel Jones, when he first came into the NFL, the deep ball was the thing that people were clinging to. Like, yeah, he's athletic. Yeah, he can make other plays, but like he was dropping those big time throws deep down the field early in his career. 20 big-time throws as a rookie, 24 in year 2. That's a 5% big-time throw rate. That's pretty good. And I don't think he's had that many since, like in all of the years combined since. And in this game, again, multiple times he had guys open deep or in one-on-one coverage deep. And every time he did, you're right, it's not like he's just missing them. They're miles underthrown, like problematically underthrown. Like they're so far underthrown, he's throwing them like right to the DB who's trailing in the wake of the wide receiver who's running open down the field. Like if Daniel Jones could even get in the vicinity of a deep ball, the Giants win this game.
The last interception that he threw, I think it was he got it out there pretty far. Obviously, you're taking some chances, game-ending interception there, but usually the deep ball, when you're underthrowing it, it's not an arm strength issue. It's a touch and a feel. It's an accuracy issue. It's not like, oh, these quarterbacks can't throw the ball 50 yards in the air from the spot, but it does look like his passes were dying when he did throw the ball down there. I don't know if there's a swirling wind. It's always a little windy there, and it's tough to throw in that stadium, I believe, but I don't know if that was a factor tonight in particular.
Or it's a timing thing, right? Like you're so late putting the ball in the air, you can't get it to where it needs to go. This was always like the Joe Flacco traditional underthrown deep ball thing. Flacco had, one of the strongest arms in the NFL, but he was always chronically late in putting those balls in the air so they could never get out where he needed to get them to by the time he decided he wanted to throw it. Somebody was saying that the amount of dimes that Danny Dimes created was vastly overstated. It really wasn't, though. I think
that's kind of true. I think that's his rookie year. He had a bunch, but it wasn't like he had a ton at Duke. But his rookie season, it was up there.
His first 2 years in the NFL, he had a lot of nice deep passes or a lot of nice big time throws, and that was really where the Duke thing was a bit overrated, but like his first couple of years in the NFL, that's what he looked like he was going to be. He was going to be a quarterback to put the ball in harm's way a bunch, but he was going to have a bunch of big throws, and he'd make some big plays with his legs as well, and that was what he was. And then the big throws just disappeared. They went out of his game almost like that, and they've never come back.
Dallas did a much better job stopping the run, Sam. Much better job. Devin Singletary, 14 carries for 24 yards. He had a couple key runs on third downs and fourth downs, but for the most part, Dallas was not getting blown off the ball like they were in previous weeks. We said, hey, That's probably expected against the Giants offensive line, but they've been so bad. Who knows? Let's see it. But they definitely played much better up front. That made the Giants more one-dimensional. And the Giants, again, I thought Jones did play a good overall game. I don't want to overrate just the deep passes. He made a lot of good decisions. They moved the chains, but Dallas's defense played far better than they have at any, at least over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, they gave up 26 rushing yards in this game. That, when you consider what they've done for the first few weeks, they had a run defense in the first few weeks that was giving up a problematic amount of yards every time somebody ran the ball. And here, the Giants really couldn't run it. I mean, they fumbled the ball a couple of times as well. That didn't help. Now, one of them bounced right back into the hands of the tight end, but they were fumbling. Dallas really did. Fair play to them for that. They showed up and decided we are not going to get run on in this game. And okay, it came at a cost, right? Particularly early in the game, that defense was open over the top quite a lot. But from a game plan perspective, that's the right idea, right? We're going to clamp down on the run. The Giants can't run. We'll force them to the air. We'll create the biggest spaces on the back end of the secondary because apparently Danny Dimes can hit those. And then we'll just hope that we can create enough problems at the shorter intermediate level that he won't be efficient enough to get it done. He kind of was, but it was those deep passes left on the table that meant they came up short.
I want to talk about Dak and the offense for the Cowboys as well in a second, but there were a lot of injuries in this game as well. I mean, The Cowboys not only losing Parsons late, DeMarcus Lawrence came out of the game. I don't think he came back in with a foot injury. Dallas was into their third and fourth string corners opposite Trayvon Diggs. Diggs had to leave for a minute after Micah Parsons was working on massaging his little what was it, a calf cramp or whatever he had. I mean, it was Dallas was beat up on the defensive side of the ball. I couldn't help but think, man, we talked about it on the show. This could have been disastrous for the Cowboys. Starting 1-3 against a team that they always seemingly beat. But they needed to get out of there with the win, and they did it. I thought Dak played a pretty clean game. He was moving the chains really well. And I want to say, I think both teams, Brian Daboll and Mike McCarthy, they do a good job when they have a playmaker to put the ball in his hands. Malik Neighbors got targeted on the Giant side, and for the Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb was featured early in the backfield a few times as well. Of course, he has a 55-yarder that ends up being probably the biggest difference in the game. But the Cowboys did a really nice job of feeding CeeDee Lamb in this game.
Yeah, no, they did. I mean, Dak Prescott played well. The kind of key element here is that the Giants' pass rush was really working. Like, that was another thing that it kind of changed in this game, right? Is that they were getting real heat, particularly from Kayvon Thibodeau, was causing all kinds of problems. So that was starting to become a factor, that Thibodeau was really causing some pressure to come on that offensive line, and Dak Prescott had to be really good because he had to get the ball out of his hands. He had to make those plays despite pressure, which is not always the case. So that was definitely impressive. And then, the sheer volume of injuries. Again, this is another, we're talking about, defense being in the ascendancy this year as a trend, offense being down. Injuries seem to be insane this year. Like the 49ers, the Rams decimated, the Chargers back to being the Chargers. In this game, people were dropping left, right, and center, and they were big players, DeMarcus Lawrence, Micah Parsons, Malik Neighbors, Diggs. Okay, his was only a cramp and he came back in. At one point, Zach Martin's on the sideline having his eye looked at. Like, everybody of significance was missing time at some point in this game.
The other thing I wanted to highlight too, for Dallas, one of the big questions coming into the season was about Tyler Guyton playing left tackle, Cooper Beebe coming in, two rookies essentially playing. Beebe struggled a little bit from a run game perspective. Dallas still not really effective in their own ground game. As well as they played on the other side of the ball, they still weren't moving the ball on the ground. Still one of the worst run games in the league. Tyler Guyton had all sorts of issues in this game: pass protection, run game, penalties. Still feels like those are things, like they survived tonight against a lesser, I would say still a lesser Giants team. But man, that could come back to bite the Cowboys. Guyton just looks like a project rookie out there, which is, some games and some reps are good. Sometimes he's getting whooped and it's ugly.
Yeah, I mean, he looked really good in preseason, and we were speculating that maybe Dallas has done it again, and they're going to have found this guy who's able to step in right away and look amazing. His regular season has been a lot more hit and miss than that, and this was a rough game for him. On the flip side, Andrew Thomas going up against Micah Parsons, having just been absolutely destroyed by Myles Garrett the week before, bounce back. Like Andrew Thomas had a really good game. There was a play or two where Micah Parsons got him, but given the game that Thomas was just coming off, he showed that no, he's still a Pro Bowl / All Pro caliber player. And I honestly, that kind of the transitive properties thing that shows how good Myles Garrett is a week ago.
Yeah, Austin in the chat talks about Guyton. You know, he'll get better. He'll have his moments. You know, I agree. What I think is when you think you're a championship caliber team like Dallas is, and you put left tackle into the hands of a known project tackle, which is not the same as like Joe Alt wasn't a known project for the Chargers, right? I mean, you expected him to come in and play, knowing that offensive linemen do sometimes take 2 or 3 years to develop. It's just a challenge, right? It's different from doing it with a team that's rebuilding. You're talking about the Cowboys expecting to go, make a Super Bowl run. So you put that into the hands of a project tackle. I mentioned on draft night, Tyler Guyton, one of the most important draft picks in the draft because he's got to step in and play and replace Tyron Smith. So just something to keep an eye on for the Cowboys. Other takeaway too, by the way, is just the impact of Malik Neighbors on that Giants offense. An elite, I know they couldn't find the end zone, but the impact of an elite receiver can have on an offense. It weren't putting up a ton of points, but they were moving the ball, and it was pretty much all because of Malik Neighbors. He looked exhausted, man. If they had a Madden fatigue meter next to Malik Neighbors, it felt like it would have been about 10 by the end. He took that low hit in the flat. I feel like they were almost feeding him too much, and he was taking a ton of hits in this game before he got that concussion.
Yeah, I mean, this was the first game where a team really did try and take him away. Okay, the first play, it was the first play of the game where he was one-on-one and ran a double move against Andrew Booth, and it was just a wide open catch, right? But after, like, fairly early on, Dallas was really clamping down on Malik Neighbors and, covering him with multiple guys, rolling coverages his way. He still got, 15 targets, something like that. But all of a sudden now, the Giants are going elsewhere with the football, right? Wan'Dale Robinson is getting some targets. Slayton had a few. They were being forced to go other places with the ball. And, credit to Daniel Jones. He was going other places with the ball and generally delivering it where it needed to be, unless it was a deep target. But yeah, Neighbors has again held up his end of the bargain. Unfortunately, couldn't make that last catch. The ball comes out and he ends up cracking his face off the turf and getting himself concussed along the way. But he had another really good game, despite a team actually really trying to take him away, which hasn't happened yet so far this season. So yeah, credit to him.
Yeah, hopefully Neighbors is back pretty quickly, but you have Wan'Dale Robinson with 11 catches for just 71 yards. Just a lot of catches to nowhere, really, for Wan'Dale. They need someone else to step up. Darius Slayton still had his 3 catches. I mean, he's able to stretch the field, always has had some of that ability. Maybe had a big drop on, was 3rd and 14, I believe it was. Jalen Hyatt still very quiet for the Giants. They need someone else to step up opposite Neighbors, especially if Neighbors does have to miss a week with a concussion. So, look, Giants still have some of their offensive issues. I just think Neighbors opens up so much, and they have to figure out what that balance is as far as feeding him and having other people step up. Dallas comes out of it with the win. They needed to. Sky would have been falling if they didn't. A lot of shout outs for Mazi Smith in the chat. He did play a really good game, at least on first watch, making some plays, not getting pushed off the ball the same way he had these last few weeks. So, good for Mazi Smith and Dallas's run defense as a whole, as we said before.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Mazi Smith is a really important player for them because he's been such an underachiever so far. If this was an indication of what's to come, any sign of life for them, getting him in there as a significant run defending defensive tackle would be huge for them.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the chat before we get out here? Mazi Smith is the Cowboys' second-year former first-round pick, defensive tackle out of Michigan, for the person asking.
Oh, here. What do you? What's your take on Brandon Aubrey's kicking process there, Steve, as a special teams expert?
I think it's interesting. He missed his 50-yard. Was he expecting to be, because they didn't call timeout? He got ahead of his process. That's what. I didn't break
That was
that
a
down.
weird kick, by the way. Like that,
Yeah.
it sort of just it veered, but only briefly. Like it didn't skew right. It sort of tracked, normally, and then jumped to the right, and then kept tracking normally. It was a weird. I don't even. Not it's not trajectory. It's just a weird way that kick went.
We have a good request in the chat for what you should fill your spot with as far as a picture goes in the
Oh
background.
yeah, what's that?
Mohal back again. The picture that Peter King took of Neil on the training camp tour at the urinal
finally got deleted, right? I think that's no longer there.
I'm sure Peter has it on his old iPhone 3 or something like that still, right?
I mean, it exists somewhere, but I think it's no longer on Twitter the way it was for years.
Joshua was asking who's going to win the NFC East.
Yeah. So that, and there was a guy earlier that we had up on the screen for a while who was saying Nick Sirianni is going to sleep well after watching that game, and it's true, right? I mean, the Eagles have to be pretty happy watching that game, thinking, okay, there's a lot of injuries coming out of this game for these two teams. You're never rooting for that, but it's not a bad thing for Philadelphia. And B, neither one of those teams looked tremendous from that game. So I think the Eagles come out of this game more confident than they were before the game happened.
I mean, Philly's got their own injury issues, but I think I don't think anything's long term, right? So once they have AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, once they are full strength, and again, I'm a full believer in the Eagles defense now after 1 week last week, so might be Philly. What did I end up taking? Did I take Philly? Because I put them in the Super Bowl, so I probably took them over Dallas to win the division. My Super Bowl picks, I don't know. Philly and the Bengals, who are 0-3. Not great. Aaron's asking how Harry's feeling about taking the Giants, the only one to believe in the Giants between the three of us, Sam. He's now taking a 1-game lead over us in the picks. Don't forget, you guys can jump into the Discord, follow along with all the picks there. By the way, someone asked about putting CeeDee Lamb in the backfield as well. And you kind of using him like Debo. There was a point in the game where he had 10 yards on 1 carry and was the leading rusher for the Cowboys well into the third quarter. I mean, I would be a little worried too about I don't want him taking too many hits, but it's a good change of pace to just get the ball in his hands.
I mean, when you consider the type of receiver he is in terms of yards after the catch, strong, able to break tackles, I would be given Dallas's backfield, I would be perfectly prepared to use that and experiment with it. I mean, Ian Hartitz tweeted, let's just make CeeDee Lamb Dallas's RB1 and see what happens, right? I wouldn't go that far, but I'd absolutely, experiment with giving him a Percy Harvin package, a Debo Samuel package, a Ty Montgomery package. Like, it worked once, right? Let's see how many times it'll work before we have to scale it back.
Yeah, and we've talked about this a lot through the years, right? When receivers in the backfield help, they kind of break the defense, right? Because you're matching up personnel-wise against receivers. It usually you kind of lose a player in the box, or the person that you're putting in the box could be a corner worried about that receiver. It helps you win that box count a little bit, helps you win the number advantage. And that's why a lot of, Debo Samuel or CeeDee Lamb or, Cordero Patterson, when people were still calling him a receiver, sometimes gives that advantage to the offense. So something to keep an eye on moving forward. But anything else from the group here? I enjoyed the game. Al was quite livid about the flags, but it was it was Cowboys, right? I mean, you can't complain about a Cowboys game if you're Al Michaels. This wasn't that like Washington Chicago game from a couple years ago.
Are we supposed to change?
Why is everybody? Now you guys are in my head. If I don't change my shirt, yeah, this is the shirt I wore today. So I figure I could wear it tonight.
I wore today. It was just under a hoodie at the time.
Like, that's legal. And somebody asked if I wore the same shirt 2 nights in a row. I have multiple gray shirts. I wore one day and another one the next day. Wait until it gets colder, because I have multiple Under Armour, those like red-orange polo long sleeves. I wear those every day. So on these live streams between November and the Super Bowl, I will probably be wearing the same Under Armour reddish-orange shirt every time. Okay, so just get ready. I'm wearing the same shirt every single time.
Yeah, you should be like Jim Harbaugh and just have the same outfit 58 times in the wardrobe, and then you never have to think about it. Yeah, and nobody knows how long you've had that, and nobody knows how long you've had the one on for.
I was also dropping some design ideas into the Discord to get some feedback as we get some check the mic merch here. I'll also be wearing some Check the Mic merch once we have it. And I think my design idea could catch on.
See, Alfonso Martinez here suggesting we need tuxedos for Check the Mic After Dark. Having been forced to buy a tuxedo for my sister's wedding, I'm willing to do that.
You're the only one prepared.
I'm prepared to get all the use possible out of the tuxedo that will otherwise never be worn again.
Yeah, you're the only one prepared with your tuxedo. Don't you have multiple tuxedos or something now? You've got options.
I have a full tuxedo and I have another dinner jacket because apparently that was non-returnable.
Did you want to talk about the face mask call? You tweeted that out and it was pretty egregious.
I mean, it is wild. I don't want to, spend a ton of time on it, but they managed to call a face mask on the wrong team, which is wild. I mean, that would be bad if it was a random 1 p.m. game and there's 9 other games taking place at the same time, right? And New York is like too many things going on. They got 58 screens. They're trying to keep control of what's happening. Okay, fair enough. This is an island game on national television. There's like a booth full of people in New York monitoring this game, trying to make sure everything's good. You can't get the guy on the phone and be like, dude, you just called the face mask on the wrong team. We can't fix that.
You have noticed New York's doing a lot more officiating this year, right? There's been a lot of that we're just picking up this flag. Basically, after replay review, we're just picking up this flag. We're calling John Berger over in the corner. And John's a Giant for life, too, by the way. I wonder if he's in the booth for Giants games. Is that allowed, given his history? Anyway, they're getting feedback from New York in the middle of the game, which I think has been great. But they missed this. They missed this one badly.
So we can't get him on the phone. There's a replay of it. We can't get him on the phone and be like, dude, it's the wrong team. Like you called the wrong guy was face masked. That was a 15-yard penalty that went in the wrong direction. That's a 30-yard swing.
One last thing. I did a little trolling during the game here. Malik Neighbors at this point has 345 receiving yards. He has more now, but at the time it was 345. He's over 350, I believe. Chargers receivers are at 293. So he's had the extra week and everything, but that whole Malik Neighbors versus Joe Waltz debate, I'm not making a declaration either way. I'm just saying the Giants are happy. I think the Chargers are probably happy, but it's always worth keeping an eye on. I think Malik Neighbors has absolutely transformed this Giants offense. Even though they only scored 15 points tonight, he's still making a huge impact over here. And Joe Waltz is awesome too, by the way. I'm just joking around with the Chargers.
Joe Waltz has also given up more pressures than Malik Neighbors.
I know,
Giants are winning it every way you look at it.
It's a pretty clear win here for the Giants. Anyway, Check the Mic After Dark. We appreciate everybody for being here. As always, subscribe button, the thumbs up, tell your friends. It's all about Check the Mic. We'll be here again Sunday night in between games. Okay, so after the 4 o'clock games, before Sunday Night Football, we do our instant reaction. So make sure you're subscribed right here on the YouTube channel. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again Sunday night.